Hi, welcome to How to Paint a Mango using watercolours. Now I just started with a simple line drawing and I used a fine liner masking pen to put down some whites because I'm working pretty rough and I'm working fairly loosely, and that way it preserves the whites and I don't have to worry about it. I'm using a size 4 brush and Bristol board paper, so it's quite tolerant of a bit of water, which is good too because it was incredibly humid because it's the middle of summer here, and it also means I don't have to work quite as quickly because the colours will keep blending and smoothing together, even though, you know, on a drier day they would certainly be drying a lot quicker, but I quite like that. So I'm working in fairly loose layers, just putting down big blocks of colour. It's sort of one of those old-fashioned mangoes. I got it from a stall on the side of the road, so it's not all perfect like you get in the stores. And also I was actually painting. We've been recently adopted by a cat who we've called Barry, and he was sitting on my lap. There he is! He took a dive for the camera. Handsome devil, isn't he? Not very good at being a painting assistant, but anyway, so yeah, painting with a cat on your lap turns out it's a little bit harder than you would expect. But I'm just popping in some red and just starting to get a little bit of the shape. Because the layers underneath aren't completely dry, these colours are still blending a little bit, so I can afford to not smooth things out. And I also want a rougher look. I want it to be a bit more expressive rather than a perfect rendering. And you know, you can be a bit lighter. You know, you don't have to do it perfectly. Like, you can just let it build up. And I pretty much did the painting side of this in 2 sittings. So with this first layer, I'm just getting the basic colour and shape down. I'm getting the areas of light and dark, and then I'm adding in, this is a very watery wash, and you'll see the paints run. Now I love that. I like working with the watercolour. If they run, if they move, that's great. I like that. I think it's a lovely effect. I know some people don't, but I actually quite like it. Now I'm just trying to find that edge a little bit and make sure I preserve a little bit of that, but adding a bit more yellow so it can blend slightly. And now I'm just adding some little splatters. You'll see I'm just tapping the brush. That not only adds interest in the background, but it also creates a nice texture on the green. Because there's mottledy sort of bits, I don't know if that's a word, on the mango, then you get that effect, which is really nice. And as I said, it was really humid, and the only way to get them to dry is to put them under a fan. I don't like using a heat gun because I think it changes the colour slightly. So that's a little desk fan that attached to my computer. So when it was really dry, I came back with a little bit of burnt sienna and started to add in some of the details around the end. It was a mixture of burnt sienna and Payne's grey, just to give a little bit of definition and to start sort of making all of that pop out, because this is the only other layer that I'll do of watercolour. So, you know, this is it. After that, I like to work in 2, maybe 3 layers at most. If I don't capture it in those layers, I'm not going to. So adding a little bit of black, and even though it looks as though that's quite dense, remember there's some masking fluid under there. So when that comes off, little bits of white are going to show through. So when you're putting the paint down, you've got to make allowances for the masking fluid and where those whites are going to be. It takes a little bit of practice, but you sort of do get the hang of that quite quickly. But this layer is all about adding definition. Now, I also finished it off with ink, and someone who is maybe a little bit better at YouTube and the whole videoing thing would remember to hit record when they're doing the ink part. But in this case I didn't. Now I totally blame Barry because he was distracting me by sitting on my lap, but this is just about painting it. So you'll see the end product, but at the end of the day all I did was I used a dip pen and some water resistant black ink and just sort of defined it all, and that brought it together. So this is just how to paint it, not how to ink it as well, but you know, you can get in and give it a go anyway. So now I'm adding browns in and also some Payne's grey, just starting to get the definition in. And I'm being quite dark with it because remember, you know, we're often a little bit light and timid with watercolours. I like to be quite bold with them. I think that that's a much nicer way to approach it, and it's a lot more expressive, and I love the end result. But that, even though that looks quite dark, remember once the whites come out, that will balance it when that masking fluid's taken away, and also when the black ink goes on. But this is something I often do. I'm just coming back with some more yellow just to lift some of those colours. They start to get a little bit dull, and sometimes just adding some yellow over the top, it doesn't just bring it all together, it also brightens them up and freshens them up a little bit. Just adding in some finishing touches. But it's largely done now. So once that dried, what I did was I removed the masking fluid, gave it a few minutes for that to settle, and then I got in with some black ink and a dip pen, like I said, and just tried to balance it all out with that. But I hope this gives you a starting point and you have a go yourself. Thanks for watching.